But not all of them are equally important. And really, if you really want to know what we missed, it went from naming Isaac and him being weaned, and then his half-brother and his half-brother's mother were sent into the wilderness, and God promised them that they would grow into a great nation themselves. And it says Ishmael became a hunter and lived in the desert. And that's really all we've missed. Okay? We're going to go to chapter 20, Genesis 22. And I want to start out with asking you a question. That third song that we sang, the very first stanza. See, we sing songs and sometimes we don't really listen to what we're singing. I will trust you with all. Now, how many of you trust God with all? Okay. I want you. I know this is a qualifier, Kurt. Here's what I want us to think about. Do you really trust God with all? Now, before you think I'm getting angry and mean, it's just the next part. And it's probably Abraham's most famous story. In Genesis chapter 22, sometime later, so all this has happened. Now, that means that Isaac has been weaned, which is probably 2-ish, 3-ish. Sometime later, they don't tell you exactly, I wish they would, but you can get some clues. How many of you how many of you remember the old TV show Columbo? How many of you liked it? I liked it because I could see, at the beginning they showed you what happened. And then they went through the process of how Columbo came to the same place they showed you. Okay? Or they showed you most of it. I like those kinds of things because I like seeing how people's brains work. And in this heat, some of them don't, including mine. Okay? Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham. Abraham responds, here I am. Now that's the first step. I want you to think about that for a minute. If God speaks to you, are you ready to say, here I am? Gotcha. Give it to me. See, what causes that? That's not an immature relationship. Think about it. If you're in an immature relationship, you're probably not sure if it's God or not, right? But look what he's been through. God told him to move, and I'll tell you, pack everything up, go, and I'll tell you when you get there. Okay, well, I got 16 compass points. Don't sweat it. I'll lead you, so I need you. And then he got there, and he says to his nephew, you want the good land or the bad land? And she said, I'm going to take the easy land. And ended up in Sodom. Then he saw the destruction of Sodom, but the saving of his nephew and his nephew's 2 daughters. Then he was told he was going to have a child. My name is Abram. I am almost 90 years old, and I have no children. Exalted father with no kids. Anybody see any irony there? Okay? And then at 100 years old, well, at 90, he gets one from a handmaid, and God says, why are you trying to do it your way? That's not the son of your inheritance. I'm giving it to you through Sarah. And Sarah's going, well, you got the handmaid. I gave her the handmaid. No. Why are you trying to make it human? And so at 100, he gets his son of promise. Now, if God promises you something and gives it to you, you take good care of it. What do you think? Yeah. Do you do your best? Yeah. When God gave you your children, do you try to raise them up in the admonition of the Lord? Yeah. Yeah. So Abraham is used to listening. Remember the couple times he didn't listen? Oh, that's my sister. Bad things happen. They said, don't deal deceitfully with me. That was the other thing in the passage we missed. a couple of his neighbors said, look, let's make a deal where a treaty where I don't mess with you, you don't mess with me, and you don't go falsely with it. Again, pretty mundane stuff. Verse 2 of chapter 22 of Genesis. Then God said, take your son, your only son, who you love. Just to make sure, it's Isaac. Okay? Ishmael's out of the picture. It's the son of the promise. And go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain that I'll show you. 100 years waiting for the son of promise. 100 years. The son is at least 3 because he's been weaned. But it's sometime after that. Now here's the first Columbo. Well, I'm not even ready to give you the first Columbo point yet. Okay. So early the next morning, Abraham gets up and loads a donkey. He took with him 2 servants and his son. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. So here he is. He says, tomorrow we're going to get up, we're going to cut wood, we're going to go take an offering. We're going to put it on the mountain that God tells us to do. How many of you, when God tells you to do something, you want to do it the best way you know how? Okay? Now we can turn this into a tithing thing, I'm not going there. We can turn this into an offering thing, I'm not going there. But he knew it was an offering. And Abraham knew what the offering was. It's your son, and you're going to kill him and burn him. Now, how many of you, if we're being honest, how many of you got lost right there? I'm 100 years old. This is my son, I promise, and you're taking it away from me. I know it. Anybody? Would you at least be thinking that way?
Oh, yeah.
Let's be honest with ourselves here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can imagine Isaac looking at him going, hey, Dad, what's wrong? Nothing. You don't look good, Dad. Really? But he goes on. Now, let's keep going. When he cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God told him on the 3rd day. Now, I want you to see a couple of Columbo things here. Number 1, Isaac, the child of promise, okay, is going to be sacrificed. 3 days out. Are we seeing some connections here? Are we seeing some things here? And God is telling us who He is. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw a place in the distance. He said to his servants, stay here with the donkey, and the boy and I are going to go farther. Now, we can tie in, and this is kind of a rough one, folks. But on the night that Jesus was captured, his disciples were in the garden, and he went off about a stone's throw. He went a distance farther. And here's what I want you to see also. We will worship, and we will come back to you. See, he looked at his servants and said, you guys stay here. The boy and I are going ahead. We'll come back. Is that defiance? Is it grace? Is it wishful thinking? Is it trusting God's providence? I'm not going to tell you which one it is. Because all of them are legit. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. Now I want you to think about that for just a minute, and that's a clue. See, we always like to picture Isaac as this little, kindergarten first grader. Isn't that kind of what the picture you have of him? Anybody? But what first grader can carry enough wood for an offering? Probably because of the amount. By the way, how many of you know that to incinerate a body it takes a fair bit of wood? Are we okay with that?
Well, I don't think so.
Right. I mean, One bag of charcoal protects isn't going to get the job done.
No.
So it was a significant amount of wood, and he made Isaac carry it. And I put them somewhere in my mind between 10 and 20.
I was thinking more like 10 to 12.
Yeah, maybe a little older, according to how much, big boy maybe. I've known some big 12-year-olds. I was 6'2" and 175 pounds at 12 years old, okay? That took a lot of wood. Abraham carries the fire with him and the knife with him. As the two of them went on together, Isaac looked at his father and said to him, Dad? Yes, son? The fire and the wood are here. Where's the lamb? How do you answer that? You know that your child is the lamb. By the way, another parallel to Jesus. Jesus is the Lamb of God. But here's what I want us to think about. How did Abraham answer that? Because how he answers it could make a difference. Think about it. If this person is between 10 and 20 years old, and you say, you're it. There's the wood, I'm out. Okay? Okay? He would have that ability. And let's remember, Abraham is 100 years old. He's probably not going to catch a teenager. Are we understanding all this? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. God will provide it. Now, did you notice that he missed one little detail? And you're it.
Yeah.
And you're it. And two of them went on together. And they went to the mountain. When they reached the place God had told them, Abraham built an altar there, and he arranged the wood on it. So here's the stones placed the way they were supposed to be put biblically. Here's the pile of wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Hey, son, I need to talk to you. So I want you to think about that moment for a minute. You trust God with everything. What is your Isaac? What is the one thing in your life right now that you're not willing to sacrifice? And if you say everything, be careful, because God's going to hold you to it. Can we be honest enough with each other to say that? If you say, I'm going to give him everything, don't be surprised if he says, prove it. Don't be surprised if he says, okay, lay it out. And see, we want another Columbo clue. When it came right down to it, that's what Jesus did for us, wasn't it? God said, I'm going to prove my love for you. I'm going to lay down my best. He laid his son down. And he told his son what was going to happen to him in the most gruesome way possible of its day. And his son went, okay, for the program, I get it. Because I love him too. Well, look what happens here. Then he reached out his hand, he took the knife to slay his son, but the angel of the Lord called out from heaven. And I want you to think about this for just a minute. The sacrifices that will be given after this, the sacrifices that will be from Moses' time on, they didn't take a lamb and put it on wood and then slit its throat. The blood would make it all harder to burn. They slit the throat over here and then put on. That's why it says Abraham pulled his knife and had his son here. It wasn't like the pictures. He wasn't laying on a bed of wood. Abraham was looking eye to eye with him. what happens when you come eye to eye with the true God and the true decision God tells you to make? I can speak to that. I can speak to that because for 25 years, I didn't want to go into ministry. I was told as a fifth or sixth grader that I would be a good preacher one day. I don't know if my principal would be right or not on that point. But I didn't want to be a minister. When I married Lisa, I didn't want to be a minister, right? She married a school teacher. But God finally said, do you trust me with everything? Do you truly trust me? I had a wife, I have 2 kids. Do you trust me? And one of my pastor friends looked at me and said, how little can you live on? And in 18 months, I was down to it. Why? Because God was testing. When you're in that place, God will test you. The angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham! And he responded the same way. Here I am. You got me, I'm here. I'm paying attention. Don't lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. See, remember, he's like this. He's got the knife, and the throat is right there. And he's got his arm on his shoulder. And I picture it as he's got his arm on his shoulder, son. He's looking eye to eye, and the tears are flowing. Because he knows what he's got to do. And just as he's ready to do it, just as he's ready to prove to God that he'll give everything, that's just, no. You're not me. You're not me. You told my child, you told my son, your son Isaac, my promise to you that I'll provide. So I'm going to. When it came to all of mankind and a cross, there was no way to stop God from sacrificing his son Jesus. God sacrificed everything for a cross. Pastor, do you realize you're crossing over about 4,000 years? Yeah, I know. And yes, I know it. But I want you to see the parallels here, because God doesn't work in a vacuum, and he doesn't work secretly. Now I know you fear God, because you've not even withheld from me your son. You've not even withheld my promise to you. He's your only son. Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket was a ram, caught by its horns. Why was it caught by the horns? Huh? That's a good reason, and that is a big part of it. But there's another reason. Sacrifices had to be perfect. If it had gotten caught in the brambles by its leg, it might have a cut on it, and then it wouldn't be a fair sacrifice. If it got stuck by the wool, the thorns could have stuck it, or it could have fallen and bruised its knee, and then it wouldn't be a sacrifice. The horns, they don't get hurt. They're a hardened up material. Those thorns didn't do a thing to it except tangle it up. God will provide. Abraham went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. I'm not going to tell you that if you trust God with everything, he's not going to take your favorite possession and he's going to take it as a sacrifice and offering. I'm not going to tell you that, because he might. But if he does, then it wasn't your most precious possession, was it? What's your most precious possession? Your family? Your degree? Your work? Your bank account? Your trophies on the wall for sporting events? for your relationship with God. Would you be willing to lay down all the things you consider important? Would you be willing to lay them on this altar for God to say, I will give you my best? Question. It's a question we all have to come to. Because the real question is, how much do we trust God with our favorite possession? And by the way, I'm looking in this room, and everybody has a different favorite possession. I'm going to tell you, I have a favorite possession. And I don't know necessarily in the moment. I pray God gives me a hint, like 3 days to deal with it. Not going to lie to you, I like that 3-day idea. It bothered me that it'd be there, but at least with 3 days I could ration myself to it. Verse 14, so Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. What do you need the Lord to provide for you? The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time. And he said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord. Now, I want you to take that phrase for just a minute. There's another passage, but I want you to understand. God, when you swear to something, you go into court, they make you raise your right hand, and you make your swear to be a witness, right? So help me God. When they take an office, so help me God. You swear by God because He's higher than we are. You swear by something more powerful than yourself. How does God do that? How does God do it when there's nothing more powerful than Him? See, we should be careful how we swear for things. I've heard people say, I swear on my mother's life. Really? I swear on my children? Really? Do you realize what you're saying? You're putting them in the balance. But God, there's nothing greater than Him. So He says, you know what? I swear by myself. I swear on my own reputation that because you have done this and have not even withheld your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies. And through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed because you obeyed me. The rest of the Kalo story. There are Jewish people in every nation on earth. And they're blessed because of the Jewish nation. But even greater than that was a few thousand years later, when God gave His own sacrifice of His Son and changed the course of human events forever. George was my son, for those of you who don't know. My son was talking to me and he says, I had an argument with a guy recently. He said, really? He goes, yeah. He said that Christianity, European Christianity, ruined the African church. George says, the African continent had Christianity on it before the Europeans. How do you know that? How many of you know that the Europeans were late to the party? If you're not sure of that, go to the book of Acts. Check out a guy named Thomas. I think so. Yes. Who sat with an Ethiopian on a cart. And the Ethiopian went back to Candace, the queen of Ethiopia. And I'm sure he told her what he heard. And by the way, if you're not sure, some of the oldest Christian buildings in the world are in Ethiopia. So the whole world has been benefited by Abraham's obedience and willingness to give everything. Are you? Are you willing to give everything? Now, see, I know a lot of people who give 75%. You know, if you're in school class, 75% is a C, right? I know a lot of people who give 80, 85%. That's a good solid B. And then there's those that go over and above and give 95%. And on an earthly system, it's an A plus. But you're not dealing with the human teacher. You're dealing with a holy God. Then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba. And Abraham stayed in Beersheba. By the way, for those of you who don't know, that was part of what we didn't cover. In Beersheba, Abraham dug a well for his animals and stuff, and he named it Beersheba because Abraham and the local residents made a treaty that the local residents wouldn't fill in the well anymore over a land dispute. So, little boy, the question you need to take away with you today, if you sit right down to it and lay out everything you had in front of you, how much of it could God take before you win some of it? How much of it could God take before you went, how much of it could he take before you went, I think I'll stop? And how much of it could he take? Or could he take it all and say, thus saith the Lord? There's another song that we sing occasionally. And I know if I say the praise, he's going to do it next week. Blessed be your name in the land of the plentiful. Blessed be your name in the desert place. But the chorus, the bridge, he gives and takes away. He gives and takes away. My heart will choose to say, Lord, blessed be your name. It's easy to bless his name when he gives. But are you as willing to bless his name when he takes away? Dear Lord, help us to be truly like Abraham. Lord, I know he didn't do this lightheartedly. I know he didn't look at his son and say with a glib attitude, Lord, don't cry. I know it was with the deepest groanings of his heart that he was actually saying, God, please provide. Lord, you know our church. You know our building has needs. You know our congregation has needs. You know the world has needs. Please, Lord, be the God who